Hey folks, welcome to Behind the Scenes. We did not get Tom's local recording working, so
It is not my
you're gonna
fault.
you're
I feel like I feel
you're
like Han
just gonna see
Solo.
you're all you're gonna see is Tom. That's what's going on. All you're gonna see is
It's not my
Tom.
fault. Oh God, they're only going to see me. Can we not
Yeah,
make that be the thing?
that's how it has to be.
Oh, it's terrible.
Otherwise,
I didn't even do my hair today. I just took a shower right before this. I'm
well,
going to lower this thing a little bit.
how is that any? No, don't. Ah, now I gotta reframe you.
Oh, shut up. Okay, fine. I moved it back up. There you
Jeez.
go.
Okay, well I still have to reframe because it didn't go back to where it was. All right. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay. Okay. So here comes some interstitials. Well, nobody's gonna see them, but they'll be in the actual video. Yeah.
This is the sort of crap I have to deal with like every time we do these podcasts. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered.
Your voice sounded fine before
did.
the podcast.
It's
The minute you get on the podcast, it cracks like a 12-year-old boy.
It's gonna be that way. I tweeted yesterday my voice was awful. I tweeted that I sounded like Voldemort, and some people wanted to hear that.
I want to hear that too.
But it's only gonna be partial cracking voice, Rob, today. At the best of it, we'll see how it holds out for 2 hours if we go that long. So
we're not going that long. We're
probably
going to
not.
power through this stuff. Yeah,
That's
we've only
right.
got 12 questions. All right. Welcome back. Well, Happy New Year. Thank you, Lee, for stepping in the last week.
That's right.
My wife was home from work and she's had the week off. She took the week off, I guess. And instead of spending quality time with me and the kids, her mom is very, very ill.
Oh,
So
gosh, sorry to hear that.
she's got the big C, and it's getting worse. She's had it for a long time, but she's been fighting it. It's been kind of been okay. But last couple of months, a month or so, whatever, she's gotten a lot of bad news. And anyways, it was good for her. She got to spend a lot of time with her mom. I got to spend some time with her. The kids got to spend a lot of time with her. But it didn't make for a lot of free time on my end to be doing
Right.
things like podcasting. So, while I was not podcasting, I was watching all the kids while she was over at her mom's, making sure she was actually eating. Sort of the things that happen when you get old and you get very sick and you don't feel well. The last thing you want to do is get up, walk across the room, and get a plate of food that your son-in-law prepared for you and warm it up. So not a big deal for all you guys out there who are the kinds that want to send their condolences and stuff like that. She's fine right now. She seems to be doing better. They're doing stuff, but it was just a real stressful time for us. So thank you, Lee, for stepping in and taking over.
And thank you to James as well, who also stepped in your house.
I didn't necessarily, I didn't listen.
It always takes more than one person to replace you, Tom. We can't possibly replace you with just one man. So yeah, Lee and James.
Totally not true. I am as replaceable as they come. I really am.
Definitely not. But also my apologies to Austin. We put it in last week's title, but I somehow forgot to give him all his Twitter mentions, We Watch Movies podcast. I guess having James there distracted me. I have no real excuse. I can't quite figure out what happened in my brain that made me forget all that. I mentioned Austin once at the very beginning of the podcast. So my apologies. That was not intentional. I don't know what went on there. So.
Yeah, Austin, that's why you need me around, dude.
That is absolutely
did I
right.
start the audio? I did. Okay, good. All right. So
Good grief. We are so well practiced.
We are. It's like I take a week off and
Yeah.
I forget completely how to do this podcast. Completely. I have no idea what I'm doing. This is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to www.avrant.com. Leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast. That's all one word, where we read all the questions, often put them on always put them on the show list, and sometimes respond to them right away. Let me think. Twitter @FirstReflect for Rob, @AVRant_Tom for me. And if you want to email us, it's our first name @avrant.com. So Rob, Tom, avrant.com. Let me see what else we got there. Austin, our producer, he has his own podcast, the We Watch Movies podcast. It's a podcast about the making of the 100-sided die. I don't know if you know about this, but in Dungeons and Dragons, they have 10-sided dice, and they have different colors of them, so that one would be well, they have 10 sides as well.
They have 10? Okay.
Yeah, the 10. So one color, This is an informational session. You can just
Yeah.
wait till I finish.
All right.
So one 10-sided die will be the tens plate, and the other one will be the ones place. And if you roll a double zero, that's 100. Right. But there is a 100-sided die, and it looks like a golf ball. It's the least useful dice in the history of dice. And that is what their podcast, the We Watch Movies podcast, about, is all about that die. The pros and cons, they debate every week, different uses, door stops, I think. Substitute golf balls.
It just keeps rolling, never stops.
It doesn't really stop. It's not the most exciting podcast, but I mean, if you're really into 100-sided die and D&D, then this is really the podcast. They go 4 hours at a time, and they do podcasts twice a week. So can imagine 8 hours of that a week. Podcast been going on for 2 years.
We watch movies.
Makes
sense.
Austin can also be reached at his Twitter at AustinTen Pond for Twitter for him. And if you want to just
Twitters too.
I already said that, didn't I?
Did you? Nah, I don't recall.
Sure doesn't really matter.
At First Reflect for me, at AVRant_Tom.
I'm perfectly fine with skipping that part of this podcast.
Facebook.com/AVRant Podcast. We're so discombobulated.
That's because I'm looking at you. I don't look at you usually, but I forgot to click off.
Only looking at you. If you're watching this video later, it'll be split screen, but for the people who are watching it live, it's only Tom, because we're that pro. It's so
sorry, guys. We want to thank our listeners the week to start off with. We've got Herb from Cross Spectrum Labs. Is that Cross Spectrum? Why do I have CCL?
I have no idea. I didn't know that.
I did. Anyways, Heard from Cross Spectrum Labs gave us a donation. Randy and Joshua did as well. They did that by going to www.avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and dropping some money into our PayPal donation machine, which PayPal then sends to us. They can do that with their PayPal account, or they can do it with their credit card. So thank you, Herb. Thank you, Randy. And thank you, Joshua.
Yeah, Herb, Randy, Joshua, thank you all so much for those donations.
And if you don't know who Herb is, Across Spectrum Labs, we talk about them pretty regularly on here, and I have no problems talking about them again. Not doing it because he gave us a donation. I'm doing it because his donation reminds me that I haven't talked about them in a little bit. Anyways, he sells calibrated microphones, along with other things, but calibrated microphones are the things that we used to recommend to people who are looking to do really accurate measurements in their home theater. They send you you buy the microphone for a slightly more than the retail price of the microphone itself. There's a slight uptick. He takes that microphone, that individual microphone, and compares its measurement with a measurement with a, professionally calibrated, known microphone, and says, okay, this is what the microphone, the professional microphone, the one that we have calibrated every, once a year, send it out to the labs and stuff like that and have it calibrated. This is what this one says. This is what yours says. Now we can make a correction file that corrects your microphone for this one, so it's just as accurate, theoretically, as the specially calibrated microphone. So really, really quite a good deal. I was very, very happy. And everybody who has ever used his service has always given him high marks. So if you are in the microphone for in the market for a microphone, you're going to need to look up Herb at Cross Spectrum Labs.
So give us a mention too.
Yeah, let them know. We also want to thank Alan, Troy, Jackson, and Just Jay. Just Jay. All right. Sorry. I used to. Okay, I'm gonna give myself away here, but I used to do an like a play by email D&D game with a guy named Juicy. It's Justi, and he was like from Norway or something like that. He was great. I wish I could stay in contact with him. Anyways, so that's why it threw me off. Anyway, Alan, the long-winded, bought some printed fabric from Spoonflower for his acoustic panels and talked us up to them for recommending them to him. This is another way people support the podcast, by not monetarily supporting it, giving us money that we can use to for hosting fees and all that, but to just let the manufacturers know that they had heard of them through us. Troy did the same thing. He ordered a pair of CR2s from Ascend to let us know that he would not have even known about Ascend if it weren't for us. Jackson told Accessories for Less that he bought his Denon AVR X3300W receiver because of our recommendations. And Just Jay bought Ascend Acoustics HTM 200 SE speakers to put on his ceiling for Atmos, and he mentioned us to them as well. So thank you, Alan, Troy, Jackson, and Jay.
Alan, Troy, Jackson, Jay, thank you all so much for mentioning us to those retailers and brands.
Yeah, one of these days, I have already on multiple occasions turned down advertising dollars on this. People have recommended to, maybe we should give you some money. I'm like, yeah, I don't know, dude, because and it really comes back to the fact that we do nothing but recommendations on this podcast.
Yeah, impartiality.
Super hard time taking many. I mean, it would not change my advice, but the appearance that it would. So I would gladly take money from somebody who wanted to reach you people with a product
that has nothing to do with home theater.
That had nothing to do with home theater.
Yeah. Soap. Something. Yeah.
Porn, maybe. I don't know. Something.
Oh, good grief. No, let's not go down that path.
Well, I mean, come on. Anyways, money's money, dude. Anyway, but no, we haven't. I haven't really. Okay, in the news, Samsung is preparing to launch their second generation Ultra HD Blu-ray player, the M9500 at CES 2017.
Yeah, which is just starting as we're recording this. So, of course, if you're listening to this on the Friday when the audio version comes out, you're going to be like, why aren't they talking about CES news? Well, we're recording this just prior to all the CES stuff really coming out. So that'll be next week's show.
That'll be next week. And I always know when CES is coming because it always comes over my anniversary, which was on Friday. The press release touts some interesting but slightly confusing new features. They talk about it analyzing whatever content is playing and using that to automatically optimize your TV picture settings.
Yeah.
No word on how and whether it works with any brand of TV or only Samsung. They'll talk about allowing users to watch Blu-ray content on their mobile devices. Wasn't that supposed to be a thing that you could?
It was supposed to be part of Ultra HD Blu-ray.
But then they just don't end the spec though, is it? Is it in spec?
Well, it's in the spec, but it hasn't been on any discs that have been released. I don't know. That's what I say. It's confusing. They're talking about features that I'm like, how exactly? But supposedly those details will come out.
A lot of times that stuff will we make it so that your TV looks the best it could possibly be, and you're like,
if this is another version of BDYs, they can keep it.
Yeah, well, it is probably that, but it's also probably just ours does really good upsampling. Like, well, you don't have to upsample Ultra HD because it's already upsampled, dummy. But whatever. Less confusing in addition to Bluetooth, they can send audio directly to Bluetooth headphones. The promise of a lower price point, well under $400, and no support for Dolby Vision. So that's HDR10 only.
Yep.
Wow, Bluetooth headphones. I don't think I've ever owned a Bluetooth headphone that, first of all, I would want to wear through an entire movie, and second, that would last an entire movie before the battery died. God forbid you were watching the special editions of Lord of the Rings, because then for sure. Even Team continues to announce a ton of new products. First up, the Basics. I hate this name of this thing. LCR. So that's $150 each, $149. There's a 1-inch silk dome tweeter and dual 4-inch woofers, and the Basics Sat. That's a little satellite speaker, $100 a pop, a 1-inch silk dome tweeter, and single 4-inch woofer. So
I can't tell. They didn't say in the release, and I can't tell from the photo whether these are ported or sealed. They kind of look like they might be sealed if I'm taking a stab at it.
They're probably sealed. LCR is generally speaking either front ported or sealed, and satellites are the same way. So not always. I mean, there are some.
Expanding that Base X line.
But you can look at the woofer and you can see, because it's a 4-inch woofer, so it's going to be, I mean, that's like a 6-inch cabinet, side to side, top to bottom for the LCR and left to right for the. So it's, I mean, it says satellite, but it's not like tiny.
It's pretty small looking though.
So going to have some more Aeromotive speakers, the Aeromotive T2 Tower, which will be $150 a pop, a larger 8-inch woofer versus the 6-inch woofer in their existing T1.
$450 a pop.
What did I say?
I think you said 100.
No, $450. Sorry.
Yeah, $450.
Yeah, that's what I said. Emotiva E2 is $200 each. Switchable bipole dipole with dual folded ribbon tweeters and a single 5.25-inch woofer. So the woofers fit. That's kind of like their older
woofers in the middle. Tweeters on the
that's the way the ones I have are.
Kind
of like that.
But now you just got folded ribbon tweeters instead.
Yeah, great. The C2 Center, which will be $400 a pop, larger 6.5-inch woofers, and a 6-inch dedicated mid-range driver. And the S15 subwoofer gets a price of $900.
Yeah.
So we talked about that coming out, but we didn't know the price. My foot's going to fall asleep if I don't move. So all you people watching me wondering why I'm spazzing out, because I gotta stop sitting on my foot for a second here. So anyways, yeah, that's what's coming out from YouTube. This is the CES stuff that we know about right now. Not even, it's not even really CES, I guess. Oh, my foot. Oh, I can't feel it. Okay, I hit the computer. That's a thing. Sorry, we're having
wobbly video.
Wobbly video. That's all right. Last time I did that, like my recording froze. Some comments from some of our listeners. We got Josh Pollard, and he's of the Digital
Media Zone.
Yeah. Anyways, he asked us some questions about, I guess, what TV to buy or something.
Yeah, he was looking for a new TV prior to Christmas. He got one.
I would have hoped by now he would have. Yes. He tried out his new Vizio M Series 55-inch display over the holidays. Overall, he loves it.
Yay.
It's got a few quibbles. It only has one 18 gigabit per second, whatever, HDCP 2.2 HDMI input, and that's a bit of a bummer for him, especially since his current AV receiver doesn't have any of those ports. So HDR doesn't look quite as mind-blowing as some of the demos he's seen, because the M series has a lower peak brightness. And lastly, he's seeing the Xbox One S HDR bugs that will supposedly be fixed with a forthcoming firmware update.
Yes.
Did they fix the audio thing yet on the Xbox?
No, only that's still insider preview program. That's still that. So yeah, apparently there was an HDR bug with Xbox One S where, there's that black level setting where you can either do limited or full. So it's like either the video range or the full RGB range. Yeah. And apparently, if you do not manually put it into the limited mode, then it washes out the blacks. So apparently you have to manually put it into limited mode, but then that makes some game content not look correct. So you're like switching back and forth. So supposedly that's going to get fixed. Firmware update on the way, so they say.
He was aware of all these issues going in, though, so they're truly just minor quibbles for now. Yeah. So that's good, I guess. Good luck getting that thing on that Xbox fixed, though. Seriously, dude. For real. For real, dude. Xbox.
I still think that was a darn good value. I think it was $780 he got that for. Black Friday sales. So,
God, I was at my brother-in-law's place Sunday night. We went by there, and they were watching a football game. I'm sorry. It hurts my eyes even now to even think about and it was over the air.
Yeah.
Over the air.
Which should be pretty clean.
It is very clean. I'm telling you, I get it here all the time. And I just watch this game over the air, and I'm like, what is all the distortion? I'm just like, and I started rooting. I was like, my wife's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I am finding the remote. I am fixing this TV. I am fixing it. This is a travesty. God, I already gave them a hard time because they expanded their kitchen and everything, and they blew out, so it's a nice big great room. They got like this 50-inch TV over on the side. I'm like,
yep.
You do realize that this is much too small, right? You're not. Do you really think so? I'm like, yeah, I really think so. And you should never be allowed to touch the remote again. That much is clear. I will fix that.
Over at my aunt and uncle's place over Christmas, I dug through their little side cabinet thing, found their original Samsung TV remote because they were just using the cable box remote, which is good enough to turn the TV on and off and the volume up and down, but not get into any of the menu settings. So I dug that out. Had to replace the batteries, so did that too. I just swapped the batteries. Swapped the batteries from one remote to the other, and all to get rid of the soap opera effect, because they had soap opera effect on, and my sister was sitting right there. She's like, oh, you don't have to do all this. She's like, I don't see any difference at all. I'm like, so you don't see any difference at all, but I see a big difference, and I'm much happier, so what's the downside? It's like, you didn't lose anything. You don't think it looks worse. I think it looks 10 times better.
It's so I'm like the whole screen is like, it's shimmering. As the edge enhancement is trying to like outline everything all over the place. I'm like, make it stop.
Oh God. The joys of being an AV enthusiast.
Oh my goodness. My wife was so upset with me. So the kids, Santa got them, like they woke up and they got all their Santa presents and stuff like that. And we went to church the night before, and when they came home, the Santa presents were out. Mm-hmm. But we sent them straight to bed. We didn't open them because it's midnight, and you have lost your mind if I'm opening presents with a 7-year-old at midnight. Set them all to bed. Next morning they get up, and I had set up an old display of mine that I had mounted to what amounts to a shoe rack. It was a shoe rack, but it looked kind of nice, and I bought it for like $30 or something like that from Home Depot. And I bought a Raspberry Pi and loaded it up with a system called Retro Pi, which plays old ROMs, and then kicked in like 50 or 60, I think, games or whatever, because I did do it real fast. And it was kind of playing in the background, right?
Yeah.
Playing in the background. And my wife's like, oh, this thing's awesome. Does it have Mrs. Pac-Man? That's all. The only question she's asked, the only game she's interested in. Does it have Mrs. Pac-Man? Yes, honey, it has Mrs. Pac-Man. So she played a little Mrs. Pac-Man. She was happy. But I'm like, oh, well, the menu's not quite right. And there's this and there's that and there's this and that. And she's like, this is going to be a thing, isn't it? I'm like, yes. I just finally finished it yesterday, and now it's got like 700 and something games, and not all of them work, and I'm trying to let myself be okay with that, but I'm kind of not, because Street Fighter 3 Alpha Edition X2, whatever, it doesn't work, and I really want to play. Anyways, I was just playing like Ghosts and Goblins, like Donkey Kong Jr., like the arcade version. I was like, oh, I used to play this in the roller skating rink all the time. They totally owe me quarters. Anyways, Nathan found an explanation for Lee's Comcast issues, which I have no idea what they're about, but here we go. They posted the following on their Xfinity forums. In regards to 720p delivery, some of your HD channels have transitioned from 1080i to 720p 60 as part of our ongoing work to improve and modernize the way we deliver HD channels. We are transitioning all of our HD streams to progressive format. We are making this change in conjunction with the transition to MPEG-4. This means that some channels that were delivered in 1080i will now be delivered in 720p.
Yep.
Anyways, John M. on Twitter said he noticed the resolution switch with Comcast. He decided to call them, and they installed a signal amplifier, which he says greatly improved the picture quality, even though it didn't change the resolution back to 1080i. Hey, man, I'll take a signal amplifier for sure. Good. Yeah. If that's their solution to every problem, get that solution, because you get channels you weren't getting before because of that.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, all right, so some questions. Official explanation. So at least we know Lee was not nuts, and that it wasn't a mistake, and that Comcast is even officially aware of the whole thing.
I don't know if we can really make the assertion that Lee isn't nuts. I follow him on Facebook, and that man posts some stuff. Makes you question his sanity. I don't mind saying that, Lee. I don't mind saying it.
We still thank you for joining us last week.
We do. We do. But seriously, dude. Seriously. All right, some questions from last week. Jefferson. Let me see here. I got a big picture here. I guess you would show. I guess you're showing it. They're going to show it.
It'll show up. Yep.
All right. Are they going to show it to other people too, or just the people? I don't care.
Only all people watching on YouTube. YouTube.com/c/AVRant.
There you go. Remember how Jefferson was having all that HDCP 2.2 problem using a Chromecast Ultra with his BenQ W1070 projector? No, I do. I think I do. Anyways, what was his problem? His problem is that he was trying to connect it, and it wasn't going. It was either
he connected the Chromecast Ultra to his Marantz AV receiver or Pre-Pro. That has HDCP 2.2, so the Chromecast Ultra is like, yay, I'll send you 4K with HDCP 2.2. Yeah, and then the Marantz is like, I can't send that to your 1080p projector.
Yeah, because I can't do it. He knows Okay, wait. He's having the same problem now with this new UDP 203 Blu-ray player, and the error message he was using the podcast. This content cannot be displayed on your TV because it does not support HDCP 2.2 as the error message. Yeah. He knows everything will be solved once he eventually buys an Ultra HD projector, but he really wants to watch the UHD Blu-ray of Batman versus Superman. Why?
Because the next word is because. You're asking why, and the next word is because.
No, but why do you want to watch the movie at all? It was hot trash. So bad. Anyways, because the UHD disc has the extended cut with the Atmos audio track.
That's right.
You can hear the audio, but the display shows the same error message as with the Chromecast Ultra. He knows he won't be able to see the 4K picture resolution, but since he has Atmos capability, he'd like to take advantage of it. Are there settings he can tweak or any other ways to get around the HDCP 2.2 temporarily without buying anything? No.
Well, the dual HDMI outputs, that's kind of the workaround solution that we know will work. Now, interestingly, you're still going to use the output on the back of the Oppo that says video and it has HDCP 2.2 marked right on that one, that's still the output that you're going to connect to your projector. And you're still going to connect the HDMI output on the back of the Oppo that says audio and HDMI 1.4 to your AV receiver. So even though you're like, but my receiver has HDCP 2.2 and my projector is HDMI 1.4, it doesn't. You're still sending video to the projector and audio to the receiver. And that way, the Oppo is going to recognize that it's connected to a 1080p display, and it will limit the video output to 1080p. It should still play the disc, but it'll limit the video output to 1080p. It won't try.
Yeah, but that's not what he's asking, though. He says that he knows.
No, but that's the workaround.
Yeah, okay. So he's asking if there's any settings right now that he can tweak. And the answer to that question is no, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, I mean, there is supposedly in that Oppo, there's like a, in the video settings, supposedly there is a strip copy protection thing, but then it might not play at all. It'll just be like, nope.
But he doesn't have the Oppo yet, though, right?
No, he's got the Oppo.
He doesn't.
Yeah,
he does.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the one we know will work is using the dual HDMI outputs. Yes, that's a hassle because now you have one HDMI cord stringing all the way from the Oppo all the way up to your projector, and a second one then going to your AV receiver. But at least it'll work. It'll let you do what you want to do. I don't know if that setting of strip copy protection will work. You'll probably just get a blank screen. Yeah.
Robert is looking at adding an Emotiva 5-channel A500 Basics amp to. I'm going to say it like that too.
Basics.
No, it's so stupid.
Bass X. I don't know. There's no E.
There's no E. Basics.
They say it's basics, like basics.
Then they should have written it, not BAS.
But they love that
capital
letter X.
X.
They're Emotiva. They love that letter X. They love it. It's their favorite thing.
Basics amp to his Denon X4300H receiver to expand it from 7.2.2s to 7.2.4.
Yeah.
He's going to buy a 5-channel amp to do this. He's often heard that it's best to power the front 3 speakers with an external amp and the surrounds with this receiver. Is this true? And if so, why? Just because the dedicated amps typically have more power. His thinking is to power all 4 ceiling speakers with the amp so that when he's not watching Atmos or DTS X, he can keep the amp off to save power, cut down on heat, and prolong the amp life. What are our thoughts and recommendations for this type of setup? Okay, so a lot of people suggest getting the amps for the front 3 channels because the front 3 channels tend to play more of the sounds than any of the rest of the channels. It takes a lot of power, a lot of the amplifier requirements. How much power is actually going through your receiver off of the receiver and puts it into another device, which basically does nothing else. Generally, the external amp's going to have a lot more power. Oodles of more power reserve, and therefore your receiver is doing very little work, creating very low heat.
And it might, like the external amp might have a slightly lower noise
floor
or give you a little bit more headroom because it just has more watts available. So potentially there's some minor performance gains to be had, but really what he wants to do is fine. Like there's absolutely nothing wrong with what he wants to do.
No. In fact, when I started looking at doing the review for these prime elevation speakers, which I will, once I set them up, I will do. I just haven't set them up yet. I seriously considered a number of different options. All right, and I'm the same as you guys and gals. I am no different. All right, I start shopping and I'm going to get a 2-channel amp for my 2 little speakers, and I'm done. And then you look at the price of the 2, you get the little cheapy 2-channel amp. It's like $100. You're like, oh, that's cute. Maybe I should use those to power my main speakers. But then that's actually not going to work because I can't reassign my main speaker. So I'd actually need 4 channels. If I'm going to get 4 channels, I might as well get 5. Let's see what a cheap 5-channel. Well, that's not that much more expensive.
Yeah.
That's not that much more. So that's like $300. I mean, what's $300? $300. I mean, $300. That's barely anything, right? That's barely money. I mean, I throw away $300 every time I go to Sam's, just buying meat. That's totally not true, but it could be. It's very easy to spend $300 on me. But if you're going to spend $300, then you can get this other one that has a lot more power and headroom for like $500. For $500, this is an amp I could take to my grave. I will hand this amp down to my son. Yes, I go down the same rabbit hole you guys go down. I do. And in the end, I ended up with what the amp did I end up with? Tell me again. I forgot. I bought it.
Dayton Audio, the APA 100.
That's what I ended up with. 2-channel amplifier to power my whatever the speakers they're going to be called are.
Yeah.
Front heights or front whatever they are. And that's all I'm doing.
Yeah.
I think you can get away with just that, probably, if that's what you want. But if you got this 5-channel amp and stuff like that, you want to throw out some other channels, you can do it however you like. It's fine.
Yeah, no. I mean, if you've been fine running, say, 7.1, using just the Denon X4300's built-in amps, nothing is changing. All you're doing is giving yourself 4 overhead speakers with external amps. You can switch them off if you want to. I suspect, like most of us who start using the Dolby Surround Up mixer on everything, that before too long you won't be turning that amp off.
That amp ain't never going off, Haas. Let me tell you right now. I'll be real honest with you. Yeah. I don't see that amp ever getting turned off. So and you can tell yourself whatever you got to tell yourself. You can tell yourself whatever you got to tell yourself. But the reality of the situation is you ain't ever turning that amp off.
And you're someone who knows enough about this stuff to write to this podcast, which means I believe at some point you're going to be like, I have to see what my front speakers sound like connected to the Emotiva instead of powered directly by the Denon. And whether there's a difference or not, you're probably going to convince yourself that there is, because you're like, it's an external amp. It has blue lights. It surely sounds better.
Surely. So don't call that amp Shirley.
I think we know where this will ultimately lead, Robert. But what you want to do is absolutely fine. You can continue powering your traditional 7 speakers with the Denon and only power the overhead speakers with the external amp. That is totally fine.
It is so hot in here. I'm so miserable. I'm sorry.
It's like my first time ever wearing more than one layer. No, that's not true. One time I had an undershirt and a shirt, and you made fun of me for it.
Oh, that doesn't sound like me. It's just so hot. I told my wife to turn the AC on. I know it's on, but at the same time, for real, it's hot in here. All right, Traveling IT Guy on Twitter. Traveling IT Guy on Twitter. All right. Is that like his name, Traveling IT Guy?
One day I will have to ask him his name. It's the only name I have. Really it's a handle. It's an identifier.
That's fine. That's fine. It's fine. I got no problems with that. I just wanted to know if you added the guy or if the guy was on there.
No, that's
just Traveling IT. Yeah. Okay, good. Bought a refurbished Denon X4000 receiver. Yay! Everything was working fine, and he moved some stuff around for his Christmas party. When he went to use his sound system, it shut off after being on for only 15 seconds.
Yeah, that's short.
That's a short period of time. He unplugged it from a wall, then plugged it back in, but the same thing happened. Any ideas? He's hoping he doesn't need to buy a new receiver. We all know what this is.
It's a short.
It's a short. I mean, that's exactly what. And not only that, we all, if you've listened to this podcast long enough, let's all say it together. Check your speaker wire. And if you say you've already checked it, check them again. And again, right, Jonathan? I think Jonathan found it the third go around, if I remember correctly. He found it the third go around.
I'm still waiting to hear from Lee whether that was his problem. I don't think he will ever admit it. He will never admit it. He's not going to admit it.
Ain't going to happen.
He just keeps saying, "Oh, I don't turn my sound up loud enough to make it happen anymore." I'm like, I bet you checked your speaker wires. I bet that's what went on. Why are we giving Lee such a hard time this podcast? I don't know.
He's got it coming, dude. He's got it coming. Lee's a nice guy. So yeah, that's your problem for sure. I mean, like 99% of the time it is speaker wire. This has happened to me. This has happened to Rob. This has happened to every single one of us.
And you always feel like it can't be. I know what I'm doing. I hooked all this up correctly. I was super careful when I hooked all this up. It can't be. It always is. And I tweeted him back and he's like, yeah, that was it. So we know the answer to this one, but it is always a good reminder. And please, nobody feel silly about it or anything like that, because as Tom just said, we have all done it. We have all done it multiple times.
It's happened in this theater that I'm sitting in right now. Yeah. It's happened. And I've there's very little. I mean, I just go back there. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. What's happening is that the speaker, there's so much wire and everything's so tight back there that the speaker, the metal on the banana plugs is like getting too close.
Yeah.
So I have to like pull up some slack and then kind of separate everything out. I'm like, I should just shove some cardboard down in between those. So that I'm like, yeah, that doesn't sound like a fire hazard at all, you idiot. Why did your house burn down, Tom? Well, I was short. My speaker wires out, so I added some, trinitrocellulose between the things, and poof, it's like an onkyo back there. All right, so new for this week, Jeremy. Jeremy has a Sonos Connect amp, and he'd like to add a pair of bookshelf speakers for $100 or less. He's considering the Klipsch R14Ms and the Pioneer Andrew Jones SPBS22LRs. Is that really what those are called? What are they called?
That's the official name. Is the It's the Pioneer Andrew Jones bookshelf speakers, but that's the official model number.
All right, I didn't realize they had them all in them. Any input on which of these two are better, or do we have a different suggestion for $100? How far away is he sitting? Because if he's sitting really far away, I guess the
I don't know.
might be an option. I have a different recommendation that doesn't quite fit in his budget.
Oh,
unfortunately. But look at that. Okay. I'm sorry. I just noticed something.
Yep.
The EMP text speakers are $112.50 each for the bookshelves. The R5.
Dude, that's like double the budget.
No, $100 for each. Isn't that what he said?
For a pair.
Oh, I take it back then. Sorry.
I'm
sorry. I'm just freaking out because EMP is now going to be moving to RBH. It says it right there on the website.
Yeah. You can already do that. If you go to rbhsound.com, you can already buy directly from them. So they're just folding EMP Tech back in.
That's what
they've always been an RBH company.
I know. I was just surprised that they were doing.
Yeah. No, for $100 a pair, I personally, I would go straight to the Pioneer Andrew Jones speakers. I don't really think you can do a whole lot better than those, and they are good sounding, and they sound better than just about anything else at that price point. I want to let people know they're now selling them through Accessories for Less. So
really?
You can get them over there. That wasn't the case just not that long ago. They're newly available at Accessories for Less. They're $80 for the pair over there. They're normally $130 a pair. Like $80 over at Accessories for Less. So it's like, dude, that is such a good deal.
So he's considering these speakers when they're over $100?
Well, you can frequently find them on sale because they sell all over the place.
Well, the smaller EMPs are the compact bookshelf are $125 a pair. So I'll still go with that one then because I think that'd be a good one. There's a lot of really small little speakers that you go with.
But see, I don't know if he's using a subwoofer. I don't think he is. It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like he's just adding these speakers and he's got $100 to spend.
Yeah.
So I'm like, the Pioneer Andrew Jones they're larger. They have a little bit more bass to them.
Mm-hmm.
Like those little EMP techs don't play very much bass.
Yeah,
You'll notice we're kind of ignoring the clips a little bit. It's like if you got them and you like them, I'd really want you to hear them first and decide for yourself because they definitely have their own characteristic sound. You might like it. You also might not. Whereas the Pioneers, I'm feel pretty confident recommending those to just about anybody. So, that's kind of where I fall down on that. I also have an alternative. This would still be from Accessories for Less, and it's only while this kind of amazing sale is going on. The Focal Little Birds. Right now, you can get one of them for $99, but they're doing a buy one, get one free sale, which is like, when do you ever see that on speakers? That's kind of weird. But buy one, get one free, and one is $99. So, hey, that works for your $100 budget. But I have to say, the Focal Little Birds, they got like no bass. You got to cross those suckers over at 120, 150.
Those clip speakers are like $140 on sale.
Oh, okay.
At Amazon right now. So I don't know where he's getting them where they're going to be under $100. Their list price is $200. Are you sure he didn't say $100 each?
That's not what it said. I'm not saying that might not be what he meant, but
because for real, dude, this is that's $200. That's a $200 speaker.
We like the Pioneers. We like EMP Tech. I like those Focal Little Birds, but those Focal Little Birds, you definitely need to pair them with a sub. But those are three really good options. So
yeah.
There you go.
Probably the Andrew Jones. If you got to keep it under $100, I'd go with Andrew Jones, to be honest with you. I don't know that there's anything much cheaper. Zach is having a strange problem. Apparently, he knows Bill. On certain streaming content with Dolby Digital Plus encoded audio, S sounds sibilance, and dialogue cause a high-pitched hissing sound like a snake talking.
Yeah.
It's called sibilance. He's had the problem on both Amazon and Netflix content and on both a Fire TV and a Mi Box. Mi Box, whatever. His Pioneer SC05 receiver seems to be fine otherwise, and he's never had the hissing with Dolby True HD or DTS HDMA tracks. He's able to get around the issue with the Fire TV by forcing regular Dolby Digital to be used rather than Dolby Digital Plus. But on some content, the only other choices are stereo or Dolby Digital and Dolby Digital Plus. He'd rather have the 5.1, and the Mi Box doesn't let him force the choice at all. So while waiting for our answer, wait a second. Should we go ahead and discuss this? Or we'll just keep
Oh,
on.
yeah. No. Yeah.
While waiting for our answer, he picked up a cheap Onkyo receiver from a sorry, I was gonna make a joke, but it made itself from a local store to test for sure if the receiver was to blame. The hissing never happened with the new receiver, so the Pioneer does seem to be at fault. So what's going on here? Why the problems only with the Dolby Digital Plus tracks and why and not others, and why only with some Dolby Digital Plus tracks and not all? My guess is a firmware issue that may have been resolved at some point. I did
Possibly. He said he checked for all the firmware updates he could find, though, for his receiver, and there isn't anything newer for him.
It really does seem like it's an encoding thing, or decoding thing. This can happen. This can happen where there's one aspect of whatever the implementation of the decoding is in the receiver or a product where it messes up with one specific type of encoding, which only certain, the amount of things that they have to be compatible with it's much larger. It's not just like it's Dolby Digital Plus. It's like HDMI. There's all sorts of different, you plug in the HDMI cable. It's like, it could be 1.0, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4A, all this other stuff, 4B or 3B or whatever it was. There was like all kinds of them out there. So just saying it's like Dolby Digital Plus, how come it's not working is akin to that. It is HDMI, so how come I can't get my Ultra HD on my CRT TV? Well, because there's a lot more to it. So it's very possible that's the case. I'm guessing it's firmware. I'm guessing there's nothing you can do about it. I'm guessing Pioneer is way too busy. Everybody over there trying to find new jobs to really help you out with it. So it's time to upgrade.
Yeah, this seems like it's a decoder glitch. Unfortunately, there is the very strange aspect of Dolby Digital Plus, which is that Dolby Digital Plus is supposed to be backwards compatible with regular Dolby Digital decoders. So if you send a Dolby Digital Plus bitstream, even if all you have is a Dolby Digital decoder, it's supposed to work. And there were some issues there, and I wonder if this Pioneer that he has, even though it says it's decoding Dolby Digital Plus, actually only has a Dolby Digital decoder and not a full-on Dolby Digital Plus decoder. Because Dolby Digital Plus can actually use less data. Like, it can have a lower bit rate than vanilla Dolby Digital. Supposedly sounds the same, but the decoder is responsible for, like, making up the bits that were lost. And that seems to be where some of this falls. So you're like, why do some Dolby Digital Plus bitstreams sound fine and not others? Well, some of them are the full regular bandwidth of a regular Dolby Digital bitstream, and then others are compressed down even further. And it's usually those ones that are really crunched down that, when sent through a regular Dolby Digital decoder, end up sounding not the way they're supposed to. So I think that explains why, unfortunately, if that's the case, there isn't really anything you can do
if there's not a firmware update, then you're going to have to upgrade, dude, or side grade. I mean, depending on how you look at it. Anyways, he returned the cheap Onkyo, but wants to use the excuse of the failing Pioneer to upgrade his receiver. Anyways,
all right.
He's already has pre-wiring for rear surrounds, but has been considering some height speakers instead. So he'll need the new receiver to be Atmos capable at least 5.2.4. So he's looking at the Denon AVR X3300W. Will that give him what he needs, or does he have to spend an extra $400 for that X4300? I'm guessing he could probably get could he get an older one?
Yeah, well, just to answer directly, the X3300W cannot do 5.2.4. It tops out at 5.2.2.
Okay.
So if you want to do 5.2.4 or, of course, 7.2.4, you'd have to go to something beyond the X3300. The X3300 can do 7 speakers and no more. Right now on Accessories for Less, the X3300 is $650. So that's the starting point.
Okay.
Now, the Marantz SR6010, okay, that's the model from 2015 or tail end of 2015, beginning of 2016. So a little over a year old now. The SR6010 has 7 amps built in, but can expand to 9 speakers. So it can do 5.2.4. It can't do 7.2.4, but it can do 5.2.4.
He's not asking for 7, though. For 5.
It's doing the minimum that he asked for. It's $700 on Accessories for Less. So that's not going crazy. That's $50 more than the X3300.
All right.
So if 5.2.4 is really what you want, then the Marantz SR6010 can get you there for definitely not a whole lot more money. There's also the Denon AVR X4200W. Again, that's a little over a year old now. That one also tops out at 9 speakers max, 7 amps built in, can expand to 9. That one is at $800, $799. So a little bit more expensive. That one can do Oro 3D if you really, really want it to, for an extra $200.
You totally don't. But go on.
So if you are thinking you'd actually like to go to something that can do 7.2.4, then the cheapest model available is the Marantz SR6011. That's the newest one. So it's not the 6010. This is a 6011. It's $900. So we went $700, $800, $900. But yeah, that gives you several options. I'm not sure exactly how much you want to pay, but you don't have to go all the way up to the $1,000 X4300 to get what you want. You could just pay $700 for the Marantz 6010 to get exactly what you're asking for. Yeah.
All right, there we go. Makes sense. Okay. So you get Netflix in Canada, right? Are you on Netflix? Okay.
Yeah.
Did they, because they made a deal so that like every movie that came out from Marvel from a certain time forward was going to hit Netflix, and Civil War just hit Netflix in the States. Did you get it there too?
Yep. Yeah, we got Civil War here.
Super excited to see all the new stuff that's going to be coming. Like I'm going to see Doctor Strange, we see all that stuff.
Yeah. It's gonna come.
Very excited about it. All right.
Yeah, no,
Bill.
that was a whole deal with Netflix and Disney.
Yes, and the Jungle Book's on there too. That's a great movie as well. It was really well done. I was surprised.
Where did that come from? That's a
I was just thinking about it. I don't know why. Oh, because there's a movie sitting over there. I can't see what it is. I think I thought it might be Civil War, and then I thought, oh, Civil War's on Netflix. Oh, I wonder if the Robin gets it too. See, my brain. Bill. This is Bill the Stumper. Bill has had his Denon AVR X6300 set to Odyssey flat with dynamic EQ on and dynamic volume off. At least that's what he wants to set it to.
Yeah.
The Denon seems to have had other plans. It seems to turn off Odyssey or default to the reference curve, seemingly for random reasons, but maybe when changing inputs or powering off and back on again. So he's not exactly sure when it's changing, but it seems to be changing.
Yeah.
He's tried locking the settings, but it still happens. It doesn't switch while he's actively watching something, so he can manually put things back where they should be and still enjoy a movie, but obviously it's a hassle to have to check every time. So what's the thoughts? Dude, did he have another problem with this receiver? This wasn't that guy.
Well, I mean, this was he had the thumping Netflix. That's what started this all off. This could be another stumping one because I don't know. I
even did some research on this, and I can't find anybody else having the same problem. That I couldn't find anybody talking about it. So makes me think that either you have a defective unit.
Yeah, this could be a glitch. Definitely could be a glitch.
Which is kind of where I'm leaning. But I mean, what remote do you use? What remote do you use? A Harmony? Because you could set up
a number of buttons you'd have to press.
Yeah, I mean the macros. You have to set up a macro for that.
There's no way he programmed a macro to put it back.
No, I'm saying that he needs to program a macro to set that up so that every time he turns it on, it resets Odyssey to make sure it sets it to the right thing. I'm not even sure if that's possible, to be honest with you. I honestly think this is a glitch. I can't find any reason why it would do this. It's never done it to me. As far as I can tell, it's never done to anybody else. I do think you may have been cursed by somebody at some point. You clearly have pissed off the audio gods in some way. You need to make some sort of like sacrifice or offering or amends in some way. I don't know what you're going to do. I have no idea what to tell you. There's certainly a spirit quest in your future to figure this out because, dude, seriously, get out of that house. It's like haunted.
This seems like have you ever had this? I've had stuff like this happen just like on a computer, like on a laptop, right? Like you set up a like the default way that your dock is supposed to open with all your presets or whatever, and it never remembers them. And it's like, why do you go through, make all the changes, save changes? It goes, okay, I saved the change, and then it never works. And you're like, why? Why doesn't that work? And sometimes you're just kind of left with that. It seems like that type of thing. But I would say in a case like this, since this seems like it's a memory glitch of some sort, I would do a full factory reset. Right? Like I'm not exactly sure the buttons you press, but in the manual for the Denons, they'll describe how to do a full factory reset.
Yep.
I'd run through the setup wizard again And then and this is a good thing to do regardless. I would use the web interface, right? So you go into the menu of the den and you go into the network settings and you look up the IP address and you plug that IP address into any web browser and any computer, and that will bring you to the web interface. Now, you can do all the settings in the web interface, and I've found that sometimes making all my manual settings changes, like setting it to the flat curve, if I want to change speakers that were auto set to large to small, all that type of stuff, I actually find it easier to do that in the web interface anyway, and then save your configuration in the web interface.
Yeah.
Now, if this problem continues to happen after doing all that, it's not exactly any less of a hassle to load your settings from your computer every time, because that's a 10-minute process. So I'm not going to say that that's a solution.
No, that's not the solution.
But I would try doing that first, because if it's just a memory glitch where it's like, I ran the auto setup, well, I know for a fact he's run it more than one time, but let's just say for some reason after all those multiple times it had a memory hiccup. I'm like, just do the full factory reset, do it again, do any manual changes in the web interface, and then if it's still screwing up, call Denon, because it's a glitch.
It is the turn it on, turn it back on, turn it off, turn it back on solution. That is
basically, it's a reset. We're doing a reset.
It's not a bad idea. I would definitely do that before I called Denon. I think that's great. Sure. My wife the other day was like, my iPhone won't charge. I'm like, I don't know, dude. I ain't got time for you. Because she's, whatever.
Power it fully off, power it fully back on.
It's exactly what she did. She goes, I turned it off and turned it back on. It's starting to charge now. I'm like,
yep.
See? I didn't even have to. Problems are fixing themselves around here. Love it. So when we talk about subwoofer location, this is Bill again. What part of the subwoofer do we use as a point of reference for measuring its distance from any walls? For example, his SVSP B13 Ultra has its driver and ports all on the front face, but the cabinet is 28 inches long. If he has it pressed up against the side wall, it leaves, say, 18 inches of space between the back wall and the front panel. Do we consider the sub to be in a corner? 18 inches from the front wall, 36 inches from the front, 46 inches from the front wall, or maybe some hit middle point like 32 inches from the front wall. So what if the driver were on the front and the ports were on the back, or what if we had passive radiators? That's actually not a bad question. And I don't know that. I mean, usually it doesn't matter because most people are dealing with the same sub. So if they measure to the front of the speaker to the back of the speaker, or how far from the front wall to the back of the speaker, or front wall to the front of the speaker, or whatever. In general, we're not talking about what side has the driver on it. That's not what we're looking at. I am talking from where you stop having wall, from where the wall starts and where the speaker starts. That gap is what I'm talking about when I say 12 inches off of the front wall. I'm talking from the wall to where the subwoofer starts. If the subwoofer driver is face forward, that's the back of it. If it's faced the other way, that's the front of it. Doesn't really matter. I'm just talking about where the speaker starts. If you had two dramatically different sized subwoofers, like a SVS cylinder and the one that they're 2+/2 or whatever, the ones that were the size of a coffee table, in theory you would want to have a more maybe a different distance measurement when you're talking about something like that. But the most subs are around, especially most people's environments are about the same size. So I would just say to wherever the speaker starts and the wall start, gap there.
So I mean, if you're going by what frequencies the subwoofer is producing, you've got about 2 feet of leeway, where there's kind of like anywhere within about a 2-foot radius as far as the frequencies you're producing, because they're low, long wavelengths, that it doesn't really matter too much, because like 125 hertz is about 8.8 feet long. That's about how long that wavelength is. So a quarter of that wavelength is like 2.2 feet. That's why I say you got about a 2-foot leeway, because your sub isn't playing a tremendous amount above 125 hertz in most cases. So within sort of that 2-foot range doesn't make a tremendous difference, which is why for most subs, like you're saying, this sub is 28 inches long. All right, that's a little over 2 feet. But more or less, if you had that sub tucked right into the corner, you'd say, yeah, it's in the corner. For all intents and purposes, even if you turned it around and faced the drivers into the wall, it's like still more or less within about 2 feet, and it really doesn't make much of a difference. Yeah. So you kind of got about a 2-foot leeway. If you've taken this sub and you've positioned the back of it 18 inches away from the wall, then I'd say, yeah, your sub is like, a foot and a half, a foot away from that wall. It's not right in the corner. You've given it some distance because you've got that 18 inches plus the 28 inches to where the driver actually is. But subtract about 2 feet off of that, and that's kind of more or less where your sub is, as far as if you want to pick one point of reference. So yeah, give yourself about a 2 foot leeway, and you'll be well within the ballpark.
Bill also asks, can projectors get burn-in? So should we have any concern about constantly having black bars or leaving a menu or HUD or HUD on the projector for a really long time? That was this question kind of blew my mind because I never really thought about it.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I've ever heard or seen burn-in from a projector. I imagine it's possible.
I did it with my old Sanyo.
But really, don't you kill the it's not the bulb that burns in, right? It's the panel or whatever.
Panel itself.
I mean, I guess I guess it's possible, but I've never seen it.
Well, burn-in isn't the correct thing. You can get uneven wear. So like when I had my old Sanyo, that was like a 720p projector. It was at the time where I still had a lot of 4x3 content. Like that's how long ago this was. So I watched a lot of 4x3 content on that projector with the black bars on the left and right. And the center portion that was always lit up of that LCD, aged. I don't know exactly how to say it, but like you could kind of make out if you put up a full white field, you're like, oh, I can still see the black bars. Like they're a little bit
brighter.
not the same shade as everything else. So I mean, LCDs can get that type of uneven wear.
Would DLPs do the same thing? I can't even imagine that DLPs would.
I mean, technically they can, because I mean they're mirrors, but those mirrors over time can like etch or become a little foggy. I mean, there's a lot of heat on those tiny little mirrors. There is a lot of heat. So over enough time, they can start to deteriorate a little bit. So yeah, it's possible. It's possible to create uneven wear, I'll call it. I won't call it burn-in, but I'll call it uneven wear on projector panels. Constantly leaving something with the same black bars in the same space or the exact same image in the exact same place for hours and hours and hours and hours. It's not great for any display, flat panel projector, anything. It's not fantastic. Yeah.
So Bill knows we get excited about lasers, especially Rob, but then he does as well. But have we actually compared the Epson LS 10,000 and the LS 10,500 to the JVC projectors, their regular lamp-based DILA models, not the new $35,000 Blue Essent? He did in stores, not at home, and the JVCs still had superior black levels in motion. Absolutely no blurring or loss of detail with fast-moving images. He wanted to like the laser-based projectors, but he wound up buying a JVC because his eyes told him it was better.
Yeah. That's what the reviewers say too, man. You're not alone.
There you go. I don't trust anything I see in a store. I hate to say it. It doesn't take much to mess with the settings and make something look bad, something look good. That being said, that's why I trust reviewers more than I trust, not Amazon reviewers, but like real reviewers.
No, more like projector reviews, Projector Central. Yeah.
That sort of thing than I do anything else. And I'll buy it. I don't need to see a display before I buy it. I'll buy it straight off Amazon or wherever, just based on the stuff I read. I'm okay with that. It's like speakers where there's some subjectivity there.
Yeah, right.
Projectors are like they're shooting it with a light meter and they're measuring this and that, and it's kind of an objective thing. There can be some subjectivity to it for sure, but I don't know, man.
No, I mean you're right, Bill. I mean the JVCs are still the black level champs. For anything under $10,000, they're still the black level champs. The motion thing, I'm not 100% sure. I haven't done the same comparison you have to answer that question, so no. But yeah, no. By every review, they're still the black level champs. They're still awesome. It's just I'm like, these laser ones are here now. They're at a somewhat reasonable price. I think the extremely wide color gamut and the longer lifespan is a feature, right? That's a feature. But if you want the black level champ, the JVCs still win. And what you probably saw with the motion, I don't doubt that. I would trust your eyes on that. So as long as you're okay with eventually replacing that lamp, because eventually you might, or replacing the projector, like I'm not saying, like I might do the same choice. I very well might.
So Bill's got some pics that you guys are going to see here in a second. If you
Mm.
are on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/AVRant. Okay, Bill's got theater room is now complete. It looks great.
It
And he
does.
absolutely loves it and thanks us for all of our help and suggestions along the way. So you can look at those pictures. I'm going to look at them in a second. Right now, I'm reading.
Yeah.
He wanted to stress that he really loves the Focal Bird speakers on his ceiling as his Atmos speakers. They match well with his Ascend Sierra RAL front speakers. He also thinks they look cool, but most of all, he went to quite a bit of trouble to soundproof this theater, and being on ceiling instead of in ceiling really helps keep the room as airtight and soundproof as possible. He also mentioned that his installer used Origin Acoustics in ceiling speakers in a different room for whole house audio and more casual music listening. Bill thinks they sound fantastic. Since he's never heard us mention this brand on the podcast, he just wanted to let us know about them. Apparently, the original founder of Speakercraft sold off that brand for, I'm sure, a tremendous amount of money, and went and started Origin Acoustics with some small fraction of that money. So, yeah, I'm sure that they have really good markup for your installer, dude. But I bet they sound fine. I got no problems with that.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I mean, always
the real
happy to
thing
have
here.
another in ceiling in wall speaker option. And I looked it up; they do sell backer boxes. I'm like, if they don't sell backer boxes, I'm not recommending them. But they do sell backer boxes, so that is fine. We will add it to the compendium.
And those of you that are looking at the Sierra RAW speakers and wanting a less expensive surround or overhead speaker, there's another person who thinks they sound good other than RAW.
I love the way these look. I
do
really like it.
Let me look at the thing here.
Yeah.
Did I close it? No, there it is. Yeah.
So I mean, he's got the super birds on his side walls and back wall as his surrounds and surround back. I think those look great in there. I'm like, man, you could walk in there and not at first blush, if you're not an audio video person, not even totally realize that those are speakers. They kind of look like they're like a decoration or a wall sconce or something, right? Like they're like nice and flush. They blend right in. I'm like, those look great. And then those Focal birds, and I want people to see these images because I'm like, they aren't as small as you think, right? Like, look at those.
Yeah.
Those are, half decent size, but they look like a nice little light that's firing down. They're not a light, they're a speaker, but they don't look out of place. Like, so I really like the way
I kind of want him to put like another something like all the room treatments are really low. I kind of want him to have something a little bit higher in there. But look at him.
He ear level above.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They are great. So. I love the little bar thing in the back too. That's fantastic. Yeah. Though if my kids sat in those chairs, they would be kicking the couch the entire time. that would end up with me in jail or something. All right.
Yeah, this looks great, and those Focal speakers look great. So
they do look great. The whole theater looks great. I really like the whole thing. Frederick on Facebook. Frederick owns a 65-inch Samsung KS8500 4K TV and the Samsung UBD K8500 Ultra HD Blu-ray player. Should he upgrade to the Oppo UDP203 Ultra HD Blu-ray player? Will he notice any quality difference in the picture or sound? On HD video and sound, I don't see how you would expect. I don't expect that you would see any difference or hear any difference because it's not. It's basically just as long as the player itself can put it out at the bit rate it's supposed to. It's ones and zeros, and the same ones and zeros are coming out both. Where you might see a difference, and I doubt this would be the case, or at least significant case, is in up conversion of lower resolution stuff. Your normal Blu-rays, your DVDs. That sort of thing. But really, honestly, if it were me, I would not spend the money to buy that Oppo.
No, not in this case. No, if what you're watching are regular 1080p Blu-rays and Ultra HD Blu-rays, I don't see any reason to upgrade your Ultra HD Blu-ray player. We don't have any Dolby Vision titles yet. If and when we do, that could be a reason, but your TV does not support Dolby Vision. So unless you're also replacing your television at that time, you don't have any compelling reason to do this. No, I see no reason to upgrade your Ultra HD Blu-ray player at this point.
There you go.
What you got. Yeah.
It's so weird. I feel like weird when we don't recommend people buy new things. Like, everybody should buy stuff. Spend your money.
No, that's not. We want people to get high value.
That's right. And that's what it comes down to. And like with this, especially for me, I'd be like, I so want to buy that. Like every time Oppo comes out with something, I'm like, I must have it. And then I'm sitting here going, First of all, I don't have an Ultra HD anything.
Yeah.
I like literally nothing
what
in
are
this.
you going to use it for?
What am I going to use it for? Number one. Number two, I've got like 3 Blu-ray players in this house, or 2 now. I think I gave one away. But in the Xbox One and that PlayStation 3, I'm like, I literally do not need another box. I've got other boxes that are sitting there wanting to be used, and I'm like, I'm not using them either. So it's okay, dude.
Mm-hmm.
If it were me, I wouldn't buy it, and I don't suggest you do either. Mark on Facebook. Mark knows we've recommended Dave Katzenmeyer's TV reviews. Katzmeyer. Yeah. Whatever. TV reviews over at CNET most highly. Rob has.
I have.
Let's just put that down there because
yes.
I mean, I have got no problems with the guy, but Rob is the one that's touting him. But what about what?
Artings.
Artings.com?
Arting. Like ratings, but without the A in there. Artings. Yeah.
Because they don't give an A to anything.
People don't like vowels, and
I like it. Man. We don't use an A in our ratings because we rarely give A's to anything. They should use a grading scale. That would be that's a good gimmick. Come on. Anyways, their review of the Samsung KS8000 was more favorable than CNET's, and they said its contrast ratio was better than the Vizio P series and Sony X930D series, which is counter to what David said and what we said. So what are our thoughts? I don't know, Rob, what's your thoughts? Back up your boy.
All right. So yeah, Artings is gaining quite a bit of favorability over at AVS Forum in particular.
Oh, it's new, is it? Is it new? It's new.
Well, it's not new.
It's newish.
It's newer than CNET.
There you go.
It's newer than CNET. But no, they do a lot of measurements. They do a lot of measurements and posted a lot of numbers. And of course, over at AVS Forum, they're like, oh my God, numbers. Like numbers mean everything, right? Look how objective they are over at Artings, right? That's, yeah. So
they don't give A's to nothing.
So I've
their own.
I've read their reviews. I've felt that okay, so first of all, so many of these TVs are really, really good, okay? And there's this weird thing on the internet where people are like, there must be a consensus, or if there's a dissenting opinion, then we have to shout down the other person as being wrong. They must be wrong.
And then track down their home address and threaten their daughter.
So
basically,
that's the ridiculous part of all this, all right? And I really want to get away from that because we're talking about very good televisions being compared to each other. But when I'm reading the Artings reviews or I'm going through their recommended settings, I have personally disagreed with some of their suggested settings or some of their suggested findings because they tend to be quite strict about the gamma has to be like perfect. And if turning off the local dimming gets us better gamma, then that's what we're going to do. And I'm like, but that's not how anybody's going to use it. And I personally would take a little bit of crushed black to get a way better looking image overall versus a rock solid gamma where everything looks washed out, right? Like that would be my choice. Or they'll do an ANSI checkerboard pattern and they'll measure that and they'll say, that is the contrast of this TV. But if you have 16 zones of local dimming and they line up perfectly with the ANSI checkerboard, you'll get a false reading that doesn't necessarily look the way real content looks. Real content might have halos around it, or the black bars won't look as black because they don't fit in a checkerboard pattern. They're a bar that goes across the whole top. So there's these things where it's like, you can sort of scale things in the way the TV is made to the tests, if you know what the tests are going to be, or if you're too dogmatic to the measurements, you can sometimes be led a little bit astray. I like David Katzmeyer's reviews the most because he does all the measurements. He's a fully certified professional calibrator. He does really good calibrations, but then he does the thing that hardly anybody else is able to do because he has the budget to do it, where not every other reviewer does. He has like 6 TVs all in one room, side by side by side, and he watches them all at the same time with the same content coming off of a matrix HDMI switch. And that's where he's like, when he put real content onto the KS8000 Samsung, the Sony X930D, and the Vizio P series, he's like, the Vizio P series actually had the best blacks and the best contrast with real content. But the Sony X930D looked better on some things. It had some better shadow detail. And the KS8000 showed some of the best shadow detail, but overall its black level looked higher, even though when you did a full on-off contrast measurement, it wasn't that. right? So he's doing, in my opinion, a more holistic and a more in actual use. How does this end up looking to your eyes? And he's not going to necessarily say, this is how I get the best measurement, so that's my recommended settings. He'll be like, this is what got the best measurement, and then this is what actually looked the best. Right. And that, to me, that's the extra part. That's why I like his reviews the best. And that's why I've personally been a little bit like, I've disagreed with some of what Artings has said. But overall, if you take the whole picture, if you look at them both, it's like there's way more agreement than there is disagreement. It's just if you're this internet person who has to rank everything and be like, they didn't agree, one of them is wrong and one of them is right, it's like, nah, you have to take circumstance into consideration. Right?
So why don't you reach out to this David Katzmeyer guy and see if he wants to be on the podcast?
Oh, maybe.
I see no reason why you shouldn't do that. Just I mean, seriously. I mean, you like him, you respect him. We can have him on the podcast and let's talk to him about his methodology.
I have
and
no idea if he'll be available or willing, but sure, I can try.
It can't hurt, dude. It can't hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, feel free to make Austin do it, because that's his job.
But yeah, I don't want anyone to think like, if basically at the end of all of it, I'm like, you still need to do it for yourself as well. Like, I don't agree with David Katzenberg because I read what he says and I go, oh, I think that is what I agree with. I'm like, I go out and look at stuff for myself and I'm like, I tend to line up with what he says. And I tend to not line up all the time with what Arting says. But that doesn't mean that it's not like David Katzenmeyer is infallible. It's not like Artings is doing stuff that they're measuring stuff incorrectly. It's like, if one of them is ranked first and one of them is ranked second by one of them, and then the other guys have that reversed, that's not the end of the world. We don't have to have... It's okay. Right?
What it means is they're both good, and you'll be fine.
Yes.
Either way.
And as part of science, because AVS stands for audio video science, part of science is mentioning the circumstances of your experiment. That's a thing a lot of people seem to completely ignore in science, where it's like, what you observe is part of the experiment. And people are like, no, it must be objective numbers only. So yeah, that's my whole thing on that.
All right. We'll see if we can get him on the podcast. I mean, don't hold your breath, Mark.
No.
Alan, the long-winded. Oh, great. Third to last question. Anyway, Alan is really impressed with the quality of the fabric prints he bought from Spoonflower. So impressed that he wonders how fabric with a dense enough weave to take such fine, detailed prints can be acoustically transparent. So he asks, how? I imagine it's through very technical weaving that they allow different. It's multiple layers or whatever, but it allows the air through without, giving it still a fine enough weave that it's like a canvas, man.
Yeah.
I mean, canvases are, painted upon. It's really more about the dyes, and that's the more impressive part. I mean, burlap is, and many canvas type materials are maybe not acoustically transparent, but very close to it until you start putting oil-based paint on them. It's the dyes that is really the impressive part to me, how they can get such fine lines on these things. Really, really, really well done colors and stuff like that. That's the technology that's really come a long way. The weaving of the fabric so that it is acoustically transparent while still being dense enough that you could paint on it is something that we've had for quite some time.
Well, yeah, that's similar to acoustically transparent projection screens, right? We've got these ones where you can get right up close and you're like, man, I cannot see holes in this screen, but the sound comes right through, they're there. So yeah, that's the amazing thing of a weave, because a weave is a three-dimensional structure, and that's very good at tricking our eyes into thinking it's completely solid when in fact there's some gap between the front thread and the back thread, and there's just enough there for the air to make its way through. But yeah, Tom's absolutely right. The printing technology is what's impressive, and they're doing it at such an affordable price. That's awesome. That's really great. That's why we've recommended them and liked them, and we're so glad that Rob W., who wrote that whole write-up for us about how he made them, that's where we learned about them. So that's
still on my to-do list to do that.
It's terrific. Alan didn't send photos, unfortunately. I want to see these photos, but what he did is he had like some personal, I think he said it was like one of his daughter's plays or something. So he had like the playbill. He made that like the main front image, but then he had individual pictures of like the people in the plays.
Oh, right.
He actually made that the edge, because the edge is going to be 4 inches deep. So he's instead of just making that blank space, he's going to put photos of the people on there. He's like, if they don't turn out great, who cares? It's on the edge. If they turn out good, then hey, that'll be cool. That'll be something neat on a part of the panel that most people aren't looking at. He's like, they turned out so good. He's like, I can see details. He's like, I can see people's eyes. I can see individual teeth in their smiles. Like, it's not just one band of white like you might expect on a print like this. So he was super impressed with that, and that's really cool.
That's good. All right. He says, just to make sure he's remembered right, a panel with 2 inches of Roxel 703 and a 2-inch air gap should have the same acoustic effect as a panel with 4 inches of 703, correct? As long as they're both right up against a wall? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're talking 4 inches of insulation pushed
right on the wall
against the wall versus 2 inches of insulation with a 2-inch air gap between it and the wall. So the front face of either of them is 4 inches away from the wall. Then effectively they're very close to being the same when you measure.
Yeah. So should he bother to route openings in the side of his panel frames like Gick does in their kit frames? If Rob, are you showing an image of this?
I am showing this image. Yeah.
So for those of you that aren't, it's on, I think, Gick. Basically, if you think about this, it's like a 1x4, right? That they have basically cut out like big ovals throughout in order to, I don't know why they did this, to be honest with you, but
to lower the shipping costs. That's what it was.
I would imagine that it's all about weight.
Yeah,
but there is no reason why you need to do it. I mean, I wouldn't do it. I'll tell you that. I can only tell you what I would do. I would not do that because that looks like it'd be hard.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
I don't know that it would. I don't know that it'd give you any benefit whatsoever. Acoustically, I can't see any benefit of it. Performance-wise, I don't see any benefit of it. Weight, they become lighter. That's a benefit.
Yeah.
But hey, those things aren't going to be heavy anyways. You're going to be able to hang those with. He probably knows this already, but with like you would hang a picture.
Yep, picture wire.
You'd
Which is another good reason to go with the 2 inches of insulation with the air gap, because that leaves you some place to put the eye hooks and the picture wire in the back there without it, protruding off the wall at all. So, yeah, it's cheaper, it's easier, it's lighter, it's faster to make. It's like just put together the frame, 2 inches of insulation, 2-inch air gap behind it. You're good to go.
And if he did, so if he did route that stuff, wouldn't he then have to use 4 inches of 703 rather than 2 in order to fill the frame and cover the openings? No.
Nope.
No reason why you would have to do that. It's very firm. That stuff is very firm and it will stand up there just by itself. It'll be fine. Spencer.
Oh no,
Spencer,
we missed the last part. There's another question about the 4-inch panels. Did that not show up for you? I might have added that late.
Not seeing anything.
Oh. Well,
I got A, B, and C.
Oh, okay.
What I got.
I added a D. I don't know how that didn't show up for you. He was mentioning over on Gick's website that they say a 4-inch panel can provide additional bass trapping over a 2-inch panel, but are they talking about like a 4-inch thick panel versus a 2-inch thick panel with a 2-inch air gap, or strictly a 4-inch thick panel versus a 2-inch thick panel, like total? Or are they talking like a 4-inch panel with a 2-inch air gap of its own, meaning it's 6 inches total versus a 2-inch with a 2-inch air gap? They're talking whatever air gap, if there is one, both of them would have it, right? So they're either saying you have a 4-inch panel with no air gap versus a 2-inch panel with no air gap. The 4-inch panel will give you more bass trapping. A 4-inch panel with a 2-inch air gap versus a 2-inch panel with a 2-inch air gap. The 4-inch panel with the 2-inch air gap will still give you more bass trapping. But what we're talking about is the thicker panel overall will give you more bass trapping than the thinner panel overall.
Given the same placement.
Yeah. All else being equal, the thicker panel traps more bass. Yeah.
Or basics.
The boss.
That's how they say an amotiva.
Monoprice has that too with their K-Boss speakers, K-Bass speakers. They're using what is that company? Atlantic Technologies. They invented that H-Pass thing, which was also spelled like P-A with a line over it, S. And
right.
It's K-B-A with a line over it, S, K-Boss. Yeah. You gotta love these names. Just spell stuff, people.
Dude, seriously.
Leaving out vowels everywhere. That's what they want to do. They're like, no A in ratings, no E in bass. Well, there
no
should be an
A
E
in
anyway.
audio.
It's another
It's
S.
it's
Why?
audio.
I don't know.
Audio. We listen to audio, not audio.
We're also
Audio is for people who don't have real speakers.
we're also cool with our missing letters.
they don't have cable elevators. Cable elevators. They listen to audio. We listen to audio. Audio is the best. The basics.
That's right. So true.
Let me get my wine. I will listen to some of your audio, which you'll love it.
Nice.
Spencer is strictly a 2-channel plus subwoofer guy. Hearing us sing the praises of dual subs has him strongly considering adding a second sub to his system, but he has concerns about the best way to set up the second sub correctly to work with DRAC Live Stereo.
All
right. He believes DRAC Live Stereo runs a signal sweep on each channel separately and then combined. Currently, a sub is mixed mono in the mini DSP. If he adds a second sub the same way, he assumes DRAC won't be able to perform any magic on his subs individually because they'll both always be playing the signal sweep at the same time and won't be measured individually. So, should he set the subs up on individual left and right, or add the second sub mix to mono? You want to mix them to mono, dude. It was doing exactly the right thing.
Yeah.
You want direct. First of all, you have to level match them yourself.
Yes.
You will have to do that.
Which you can still use the mini DSP to do.
Yes.
Because the mini DSP with DRAC for a 2-channel setup is still 2 in, 4 out. So there's no problem connecting your amplifiers for your front, left, and right speakers and dual subwoofers. And it's very flexible. In fact, that's coming up just in his next question, but it's very flexible. You can still say that, let's say, output 1 is your front left speaker, output 2 is your front right speaker, outputs 3 and 4 are both subwoofer outputs. You can set it up that way.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we tell everybody to do with everything.
Yeah.
Odyssey, all of it. We said it send up mono. So anyways, the mini DSP has tons of filter option. Is there a definitive best setting for the slope of the filters or some particular combination? Is there a flat? Because that's the one I'm looking for.
Oh, well. No, I mean, like you can set, the high pass filter for your speakers, the low pass filter for your subs. So, I mean, generally, like 80 hertz is a very good starting point for the frequency. It doesn't have to be that. It could turn out that some other frequency works better with your particular speakers in your particular room. But 80 hertz is a very good starting point. And a 24 decibel per octave slope works very well for just about everything. That is your classic 4th order Linkwitz-Riley crossover scheme, and that works well for just about anything. So you set a high pass filter for your front, left, and right speakers. You set a low pass filter for both of your subs, and your subs should be in mono. So I wanted to go back a little bit because, yeah, there's this part where you want to level match the subwoofers, and that's something you can still do manually in the mini DSP, right? So outputs 3 and 4, let's say, are going to be your subwoofer outputs, and you're going to say sum together the left and right audio signals, send those in mono to outputs 3 and 4, but still individually set the level for output 3 to be different from the level of output 4. Everything else is the same. The distances and the EQ are the same.
Right.
But the levels are different. You can still do that in the mini DSP. You'll have to set that manually, though. DRAC isn't going to be able to set that for you. So that's a little bit tricky. But ultimately what you want, because you want DRAC to do the EQ. You don't really want DRAC to try and do distances and levels, because it doesn't really do that anyway, right? So distances and levels, you set yourself, right? Then you want DRAC to do the EQ. So you want it to EQ your front left speaker, EQ your front right speaker, and then outputs 3 and 4 feeding both of your subs. You want a mono output going to those and DRAC to EQ those as if it were one sub. That's what you want it to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
But does he really need 2 subs?
If he only has 1 seat.
See, that's what I'm thinking.
Not.
This sounds like a 1 seat.
It really does.
room.
Yeah.
And my whole thing is, I love the idea of you buying a second sub. Don't think I don't love that. I think that your bass will sound probably better than it does currently.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have taken the time and you have the flexibility in your room to do the subwoofer crawl and get your best possible subwoofer location actually put there, there's a not zero chance that you're going to set the second subwoofer up in such, set these subwoofers up and go, well, I mean, I think it sounds a little bit better.
Yeah.
I think it does. What you will notice is as you walk around the room, it doesn't sound as horrible as it did before.
Or if you have a 3-seater couch and you happen to sit in all 3 seats sometimes, you'll notice that from seat to seat to seat, it is much more uniform now with the 2 subs.
That being said, I mean, but if you're only really ever sitting in one chair,
we had that. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name, but that fellow who had that whole nice theater, he had 2 rows of seats. He had Brian from Rhythmic Subwoofers actually come over to his place. They experimented with dual subs versus one, but he's like, I really only care about the middle seat in each row. We did a subwoofer crawl, and one sub sounds fine in both of those seats. The other seats, they don't sound as good, but I don't care. So
I'll sit there.
And he's like, I can't justify spending another $1,500 when I don't care what the other seats sound like. I'm like, yeah, that's totally reasonable, man.
I can get behind that. So
yeah, that's a lot of money for something you don't care about. So if you've got one seat in a 2-channel setup, yeah, it's hard to say that you must have 2 subs.
So Spencer, this is how to do it. This is how to do it.
Right.
But I still question whether or not you need to do it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. No. Look at us. All of our advice. We're so weird this week.
Not as for you. You get a C-.
Your base is spelled BSS. And then we take away one S.
Then we take away one S. You just be us. You just get to be us.
You just have bus. Just bus.
You could not have the best. You can have the best until you could get your bus right.
At the second sub, you have best. 2 best.
2 bus. Bus squad.
Oh lordy! This
I don't
is what
even
happens.
Know what that accent is. That's not an accent. I'm doing.
Not.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Some terrible amalgamation of like a million different European accents.
It's like Arnold Schwarzenegger and my friend from Finland, his accent, and a little bit of South African in there. I think that's really hard to tell. Just Jay. I'm sorry, this is the weirdest episode we've ever done.
It is.
I need to start drinking. If this is how I have not been drinking, but if I'm going to act this way, I need an excuse.
This is how we're starting 2017. That's
2017 is the year of no A. Is just a yeah. Yeah.
Year.
A year. It's a year.
New year.
New year. Apparently, we're from Newfoundland now. Just Jay. Just Jay says, we previously said that if you're installing Atmos speakers and they have a wide, even dispersion that Dolby recommends, then they should be pointed straight down and not aimed at your seats anyway. But all speakers have at least slightly different response off axis versus on axis. So if they're directly on axis, so if they're pointed straight down and we're getting off axis response, isn't Odyssey or any other room correction program going to attempt to EQ that? Would aiming them at the seats provide better results when room correction is active?
This is a lot like towing in your front speakers.
It's what it kind of comes down to, yeah. And I guess that my thing is a lot of times it's going to try to do some stuff to it. There's no doubt about that. I mean, it's going to try to get the best response that it can get out of it. But the idea is that you do not want to be able to really super duper localize that sound. It's supposed to be, a wider, a more diffuse sound. So if you have it pointed directly at you, or even towed in a considerable degree, it could be more localizable. And not only that, it's supposed to go over multiple seats.
Yes,
so
that's Dolby's whole thing.
If you're pointing it towards the main seat, then it's kind of going over the head, perhaps of the seats in front, or it's to the side of some of the other seats, or it's not. You know what I mean? It's just. It makes it, at least in my mind, it makes it easier for there to be a diffuse sound if you're pointing them straight down than it is to try to tell people how to aim them so that it will be diffuse for everybody, not too localizable, and coming from the right direction for every seat. I think just straight down makes the most sense.
Yeah, like the way I would explain this, the way I would think of it is, if this were true, if you needed to aim the ceiling speakers at your primary listening seat to get good results with your room correction program, then you would have to do the same thing with all of your speakers. That logic would apply to everything, which would mean you would always have to toe in your front speakers so they're aimed right at the primary listening seat. You would always have to aim your surround speakers in your surround back speakers so they're aimed right at the primary listening seat. And that isn't the case. This is one of the reasons why the better room EQ programs take multiple measurements. They're not EQing just from one measurement. They're saying, no, you take a collective group of measurements that are around your seat so that we don't over equalize the higher frequencies, the directional frequencies. We get a good sampling of a larger size to go, in general, what should we be doing equalization-wise to get you something close to a flat, accurate response? That's actually easier to do when every seat is getting an off-axis response versus one seat getting directly on-axis and every other seat getting off-axis. So Dolby wants every seat to get a pretty diffuse overhead sound.
Yeah.
They're trying to kind of mimic what you're getting in the theater where the speakers are way up high. There's no way
30 feet over your head or something like that. Yeah.
They're way up there. So that's what they're trying to sort of mimic. So that's basically it. You still want them aiming straight down. If they have narrower dispersion, then it's similar to a front speaker being towed in. You want all the seats to sort of be within the cone of sound that comes out of that speaker, whatever that cone might be. If it has really wide, even dispersion, you got a huge cone, so it almost doesn't matter where you aim them. If you got a narrower cone of sound coming out of that speaker, you want to try and get all the seats within that sort of cone of sound that it has.
Yeah. Speaking of sound and overhead speakers, I went to see Rogue One.
Yes.
Over the Christmas break, and I told my family I would see it, but I would not see it in 3D. I refused to see it in 3D.
Yeah, that one really did not 3D, I gotta say. There was no use of the 3D in that movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I ended up buying some tickets at the place. There's two theaters that are pretty close to us. One of them is downtown St. Pete, which is the nice one. It has an IMAX in there and everything. And there's a one over in Pinellas Park, which is fine. But I saw Guardians of the Galaxy there, but it was in 3D in their Dolby theater, whatever. And I decided I was never going to do that again. Well, we went to the Pinellas Park one because the parking's free, and parking downtown St. Pete's a nightmare. So we went over there, and then we said, just not 3D. It's not 3D. So we go to the normal theater. Sound was awful. The sound was awful. I was pissed the whole time.
Yeah. That is annoying. Even if you're paying less than the full-blown, we throw everything at you theaters, it's still a lot of money. So. I
was like, are you kidding me here? I can't even feel the subwoofers hit. I get more sound out of this standing outside of my theater when my kids are watching, Phineas and Ferb or whatever they watch on Netflix. I get more of a feeling of bass. It was really irritating. All right, well, that's the end of our podcast for this week.
That's a nice note to end on.
Yeah, really.
It is AV Rant.
It is AV Rant. Come on, guys. It's a movie. The only thing that ever made me more angry than that was when I went to a DTS theater specifically. I was at a family reunion, and my family on that side is like huge. And I had like a huge carload, like a minivan full of cousins, and we drove like an hour because I had to see the movie at a DTS theater. Yep. We drove all the way out to this DTS theater in the middle of nowhere. It was like an hour away from wherever we were staying, and to see Harrison Ford Air Force One.
Okay.
And the sound was just atrocious. The last 3 minutes of the movie, suddenly the surround sound kicked in, and it was like somebody turned on the amps. Suddenly the sound, the bass kicked in, the surround sound kicked in, everything kicked in. I was like, oh, "Are you kidding me?" Right? And I get out. I'm like, "What the hell happened with the sound?" To the guy, right? And he's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." I'm like, he goes, "Well, if you want a refund, if you want a gift certificate or whatever to come back again." Come back again. I'm like, I'm not from here. I'm on vacation. I drove an hour with all these people. Are you kidding me? I was so angry.
No
Anyways, I probably sounded just like that because I think I was about 18 at the time. Maybe I might have been 21. All right. That is our podcast for this week. We want to thank our listeners of the week, Herb, Randy, and Joshua.
Yeah, Herb, Randy, Joshua, thank you for your donations.
They went to www.avrant.com and they clicked on the buy us a cup of coffee link and left us a PayPal donation. We're going to use that to pay for our hosting fees and all that. And we also want to thank Alan, Troy, Jackson, and Just Jay for talking us up to various manufacturers. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, Alan, Troy, Jackson, Jay, thank you all so much.
And if you want to get your question answered on the podcast, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us a question at avrant.com. You go to www.avrant.com and leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRant Podcast. So we're pretty active over there. If you want to contact us directly, it's Rob at AVRant, Tom at AVRant. Our Twitter is at First Reflect for Rob, at AVRant_Tom for me, and at Austin T and Pond for Austin, our producer, Austin. It's his own podcast that we watch movies podcast. We watch movies podcast about snowshoes. It's a review, and it's not traditional snowshoes. They're all handmade, but by them. They find various designs online and they test them out. Unfortunately, they're based out of Florida, so they don't actually have snow to test them on. So that's been a bit of a conundrum for them, but they're working through it. They're working through it. So we watch movies podcast. It is the Florida-based DIY snowshoe podcast.
Packing peanuts instead. You know, styrofoam packing peanuts.
They've tried all sorts of things. Why not?
Got to use those things for something. Yup.
It is a depressing podcast. It's mostly them complaining about the fact that there's no snow in Florida. It's very depressing. They get very upset. Yep. We watch movies. Snowshoes. DIY. It was DIAY, but they lost the A.
Yeah, that's right.
They gave it up. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.